my co-host today, and she's the SmackDown Women's Champion, and of course, wrestling royalty. She's the one and only Charlotte Flair. Woo! 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 There's nothing more fun than wooing. By the way, ever since, Twitter has been around, I've always wooed at sporting events.
Yes.
So when I'm like, the Celtics are winning, I'm like, woo, woo.
When I was in high school and they would woo, I was like, is this ever going to end? And then when I started wrestling, I was like, oh no, I hope they woo.
Yeah. Wait, so you would be in high school and like people in high school would woo when you came by?
That's how they would taunt me. I remember.
Wait, taunt you in a good way
no,
or
in a bad way. The other
No.
teams. So when I'd be serving in volleyball at big games, the fans or the high school students from the other side would just woo the whole time and try to distract me. Sometimes it worked, or they'd have like the cowbells and wooing.
Oh my God. Wait, so they actually trained you to really be able to be laser focused
Just
at that.
to zone it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it got worse in college too.
Really?
Yeah, but now
what
I'm
did
like,
you play in
please
college?
woo. Appalachian State volleyball.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, you're so tall. You would imagine that you would probably.
I was
do
actually
something
really
like
small
that.
for D1, but I guess tall and, every day.
That's so fun. I love volleyball.
Me too, yeah.
That's so fun. You never played basketball?
I played in high school, but I think because my dad made me go to so many camps, I kind of started not to like it.
Mm-hmm.
But I wish I would have played more. Now I'm like, oh, all the things I should have done when I was younger.
And you never wrestled?
Never wrestled.
Because I remember
Nope.
watching your dad's documentary. And which actually I just,
You did such a
I
great
just
job in
remembered
the 30 for 30.
I just remembered I did it too.
Yeah.
I remember when they asked me to do that. I was like, sure, I would love to. And I remember you saying that was never something that you were really interested in doing.
No, and I remember watching you, is it 2012 that you were in the match with Beth? Yeah, I was there for the Four Horsemen Hall of Fame induction. And that was actually when John Laurinaitis at the time, we were at dinner and he was talking to my little brother about wrestling. He was like, why aren't you doing this? And I know it was just to appease my dad, just to because my dad's always like, yeah, she'd be so great. But then Reed looked at me and was like, hey, you want to do this? And I was like, I guess. And then 3 months later, I showed up in Tampa and the rest is history. But it was, at the time, I still wasn't sure. It was just, wanting to start over and needed a change. Mm-hmm. But it just, it's crazy.
So wild.
5 years later.
And so let's talk about the road to Mania, because you are going to be wrestling at WrestleMania 34 in New Orleans. Do we know who you're wrestling yet?
I know who I want to wrestle.
Okay.
Who do you want to wrestle Asuka.
Okay.
I want to break her streak.
Royal Rumble winner.
Yes, the first ever women's Royal Rumble and the winner. We've never faced each other, never been in a multi-women match. I feel her coming from Japan and having her own legacy and coming from a completely different culture and then my background, I think it's definitely a WrestleMania moment. So that's who I would like to face.
See, now I would have thought you would say Ronda Rousey, because Ronda Rousey
She has
just
to pay her
recently
dues
signed.
first to face me.
Oh, shade! I love it. We were talking about this a little bit in my kitchen today. She obviously is a superstar in
Yes.
UFC. She's coming over to WWE.
Yes.
There were rumblings that people weren't happy that she was there. Are people excited to have her there?
Oh, they should be. Ronda's a star and an attraction. And with her coming to be a part of the women's division, obviously it brings more eyes on the women's division and not just our audience. I mean, people that don't even watch wrestling, they know who Ronda Rousey is. So it's like, oh, she's on WWE. Oh, let's tune in for a second.
Yeah.
So I think that's huge. But, we're on the road 265 days a year and you just can't call yourself a WWE superstar. So the easiest thing she'll do is sign a contract. Whether she's willing to put in that work, that's where the respect and understanding our culture and, what it means to be a star in our industry. So, we'll see how the future plays out.
So now, does someone like you take her under your wing and say, this is how it's done?
100%.
Yeah.
I haven't had that opportunity. I'm on SmackDown right now and she's been on Raw, but I hope in the future. And especially for me, even though my dad was a wrestler, I didn't grow up in the industry wanting to be a wrestler, watching it, knowing much about it. But then the 5 years, I've learned so much. And now I'm like, well, now I understand. And with someone like her, I feel like I was an outsider as well because I didn't work the independents. I didn't train anywhere else. I came in also as a college athlete and just picked this up. And I think that I would want to take her on the ring and show, it's harder if you don't have the background or have traveled all over the world learning, Japanese style, Mexican style, being in NXT. So 100%. But I think all the women would be willing to take her under their wing and show her the ropes.
I feel like that was the coolest thing when I came in and did my stint. 4-0, guys. Just always have to make sure everyone knows. Everyone wrapped their arms around me and really helped me, be able to shine. And I think that, with the women's division just really just exploding, it's really cool to see that the women are inclusive,
sticking together.
Yeah. I think that's important.
Because I think that's what's so different today than it was, a few years ago, is that it takes two. It's just not one person. And if you can elevate your opponent, you're elevating yourself as well. And at the end of the day, it's a performance. Everyone's there for a role, and it's knowing your role, playing your role, and not just going into business for yourself. And that's why the division is doing so well, because we all collectively are working together. And in our industry, it goes, 1 minute you're here, 1 minute you're there, and it's ever evolving. It'll come back around. And having Ronda, have the opportunity to work with her and her, stardom. And, she did open the doors for us, I think, at WWE with her main eventing UFC, and then WWE picking it up like, okay, maybe, the women can main event. So now it's not a men or women's match. It's just a great match.
I never thought about that, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, what is your best advice? Like, what will you say to her? Because, even though she's a UFC fighter, it's a whole other art to wrestle, because this is what I always say about wrestlers and why, I think that you guys are so dynamic. It's like, not only do you have to be athletic and, obviously, really know the skills of wrestling, but you're a performer. You have to memorize monologues. You've got to keep a 30,000 people crowd engaged. Like, there's so much to it. So from your mouth,
you're getting me excited hearing you say that. Yeah. So I'll go back to Dusty Rhodes, who I know you know, because I was looking at the picture of you two in the kitchen. Hard times. I love my divas. So saying that it doesn't matter how athletic you are. Yes, that's a perk. Like for me, my whole character genetically superior. But when you think of the greats like Dusty Rhodes, it's not because he was acrobatic or had the best body. It's because of how he made you feel. So it's about being a performer and eliciting a reaction from the crowd. Because when you walk out from 30,000 to 101,000 people, like at Dallas at AT&T Stadium, you remember that superstar from how they made you feel, whether they're a good guy or bad guy. So it's, bringing your UFC background, but figuring out who you are inside and having that extension of who you are become a character so the fans can connect with you, because the best superstars are the ones that can have an emotional connection, whether positive or negative, with their audience.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the greats great, like Dusty Rhodes.
You either want to get wooed or booed.
Yeah, exactly.
One or the other. So what is, we were talking about the intricacies of, really being good at this and the stuff that she's going to have to learn. Like, how much of that can you tell me on air?
Just repetition, being in front of a live audience. So she already has, I think, one of the hardest parts, and that's a presence. Not everyone, I think, has a presence or the it factor. When they walk through the curtain, you're like, whoa. Yeah, she's a star.
Or that's like when Brock Lesnar comes out, you're like, holy shit! I'm bracing myself and holding my own hands every time he comes out.
Like, he's a beast.
Yeah, but I feel like she's had that presence in the UFC where you're like, oh my God, she's a mean machine.
So it's a matter of staying the mean machine when the bell rings.
Yeah.
And that's what she'll have to learn. But again, I mean, she wasn't, main eventing UFC or, the toughest woman on the planet for no reason. Like, she has a reason. So it's a matter of all that dedication and determination and what's the word I'm looking for? To get to where she was, she'll have to do the same and put in the time to be where she wants to be. But it's just a matter of her not losing who she is when the bell rings.
Yeah.
And people tend to overthink things. And she'll learn the move, she'll learn all that, but it's how can I be Ronda to the audience when the bell rings?
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, and also you have to kind of go with the crowd too.
Yes.
If you're not impressing them, you got to take it up a notch. Like you, right?
No, but that's the best part of what we do is knowing, is, we're acting, we're performing, we're hitting each other. It's like so many different things going on at once, and thinking of, the times, and there's so much that goes to it, but knowing that you're controlling 30,000 people's emotions.
I mean,
like, and you just take them on a roller coaster. Like, I can make these people boo me right now. Oh, I can make these people cheer me. And that's where you get that overwhelming power that you never want to lose. It's like all these people standing up because I'm doing this. And it's learning that you can do that and slowing down. Yeah.
It's just unbelievable.
It's crazy.
So one of the other things I want to know about is the acrobatics that you do. If you weren't a gymnastics girl, from a young age, how the hell do you learn in just a matter of a few years how to do all these acrobatic things, like these huge flips off the top rope onto your opponent? Like, I watch you and I'm in awe.
It's second nature. I'm just kidding.
The name of her book, guys, available wherever books are sold. It's very raw.
Yes. I always say this: if you're scared of something, don't do it, because you're risking your other opponent's, your opponent's life is in your hands too. So you just have to commit to something. If you want to try this or that, you just have to go for it. And everyone's style is different. Because I had a gymnastics background, I flip and do things at the right moment.
You did have that.
I did. Yes.
Okay. Thank God.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
it makes sense.
But
now.
I also think I'm 5'10". Do I really need to be the flippy girl? I'm not 5 feet tall, but it's fun once in a while to throw in a moonsault here and there.
I mean, it's so crazy. I also want to ask you, your book, how did that affect you behind the scenes? Because you were very open and very honest in it.
Yeah, so it took me 2 years to write. And at first, I didn't even know if I wanted to write a book with my dad. Because I'm like, I've only been wrestling for a year on the main roster. Why am I writing a book? But they thought it would be cool to see my dad's career come to WWE in a different way, and they never thought it would be as a manager. So then to add me, but I worked really closely with the author Brian, and he's like, "You have a story to tell." And I was like, "I don't know if I'm ready to tell this story," because I didn't even want to be a part of Total Divas, because I'm just such a private person, and I've seen my family go up the ups and downs. But when my dad did the 30 for 30, and while he was working on that, I was journaling for 2 years for the book. And the one thing my dad taught me is, don't be ashamed of your past, and your past doesn't define you. So as I was going through the book, I was like, wow, I'm not alone. And it was very therapeutic, and I got it out there. And I felt for so long I carried around so much guilt and shame and embarrassment, but I needed to write that book, if not to let others know that they're not alone, but for myself. I was like, it's okay that you've, been through these things and made it out. And it's okay that you didn't want to wrestle your whole life, and now you're here. And, losing my brother impacted my life in ways that, I can't explain.
I'm sure. And I know even your dad's health scare changed you, and you're, figuring out how to slow down a little bit, even though you're in such a fast paced business.
Yeah. And it's not even, it's not taking the days off, but it's just learning to enjoy the ride. It's it's not a sprint. And it's a thing in our business is you have to wake up every morning and know who you are. And just seeing my dad sick and then overcoming it and changing and continuing to evolve. He's like, "Hey honey, I'm on an offset video." And I'm like, "Why are you so cool at 69? Yeah,
he's Ric Flair.
He has so much swag, and he doesn't even know it either. He doesn't even know what that word means. Probably.
I love your dad. Every time I see him, we have so much fun. You only learn from your wounds and scars and mistakes and failures. And you wrote your book, Second Nature.
Yes.
And you were really vulnerable in it.
Yes.
And I want to know, what were you so ashamed of? What were those scars and those wounds that you have had to get past, and how did you get past them?
I think trying to uphold a certain image, knowing that, my dad had been in the spotlight my whole life, and I wasn't really used to that environment. And then when I got to WWE in 2012, I was just thinking of my entire 20s, and I'd already been married twice, and, quit my volleyball scholarship and married a guy right out of college, and then got remarried, and going through a codependent relationship, and it being unhealthy and living with that and not hearing the other girls talk about it and not having everything put together and not knowing what I wanted to do or where I wanted to be and just lost. And I think that's a lot when you get to WWE and everyone's like, you're Ric Flair's daughter and you must have it all together and you must have had everything and you just walked in the door. But I just had to pretend like it didn't faze me or bother me. But every day I just, wanted to cry because I was still married to my first husband. And then even thinking first husband, even when I say that now, I'm like, oh, are people judging me listening? And it's just a lot that I had to overcome because when I started writing this, I had already won the new WWE Women's Championship at Wrestle Mania 32, and I was the center of AT&T Stadium, which is unbelievable, unheard of, and Triple H and Roman Reigns and Undertaker and Shane McMahon were like the eye candy, but here I had this like secret that I came from this relationship that I was still dealing with and not talking about codependency and, being scared of my own shadow, but I created this character that I wanted to be like in my own life. And that's how I made it through. And the better my career gets, the better my personal life gets. So I just spent 2 years journaling about it. And I worked with Brian closely, the author. And he was just like, no, you're not alone and neither are your readers. And that's what you need to let them know, and that your past doesn't define you. I just woke up one day and was like, okay, I'm going to wrestle. And it changed my life.
So unbelievable because, everybody has their stuff, right? And it's always, I feel like, a whole other thing that we don't understand when you're someone famous's kid, right? Did I say that in the right tense?
Yes.
There's like this whole other added pressure. And then you're walking into a business where, he has such a legacy and you have so much to kind of prove. And there's just so many dynamics and emotions.
I didn't really know about his legacy either. That's what's crazy is people are like, well, your dad was Ric Flair. You must have grown up around the business. But my dad, yes, I went to my dad's matches, but I was always playing sports and I just wasn't really into, I don't know, the celebrity scene or anything like that. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now it's a little bit bigger, but I went to the same high school with the same people. So I just know. And it's when I started, that's when I started to learn like, wow, my dad means a lot to a lot of people in this industry. And I started to understand his choices. For instance, in 2008, I couldn't understand why he couldn't just walk away from the business. I'm like, Dad, you wrestled for 40 years. Why are you having this midlife crisis and getting married again and divorced again and married? And why are all of a sudden you wrestling now at TNA? I just didn't get it. But now being a part of the company, now I get it. Like the feel you get when you walk on stage in front of 101,000 people, there's nothing like it. And being able to control someone else's emotions or an arena full of emotions, now I understand. And then the road life becomes your family. And that's, I'm on the road 260 days a year. Like that's
living out of a bag.
So now I get it. 'Cause I'm like, oh, I'm off for 10 hours. What do I do with myself?
Yeah, if there's an addiction, I'm sure, to that, like that feeling. And I've had it a couple of times getting to go out there, and it's just like, it's an energy like nothing else.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then I think, well, I wasted my 20s. Well, no, I don't want to say wasted. I've learned a lot, and I'm continuing to evolve and change and just be a better person. But I'm like, now I'm going to be 32 in April, and I want it all. I want to wrestle. I want to main event WrestleMania, but I also want to have a healthy relationship with somebody and have the opportunity to get married and know what it's like to be, love someone for the right reasons and love yourself, but then also have kids and do all this and, be the greatest of all time as a female. So
How
I'm
do you
just
do
like,
that?
I don't know. So every day I'm just like, what can I do? Go, 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 go. But just, I need to learn to enjoy the process. But it's just great. I always, I look at where I was 5 years ago, and even in pictures, people wouldn't recognize me, but it's all about just having confidence in yourself and realizing that everyone makes mistakes and just learning that for some reason I feel guilty about things, or the embarrassment is guilt, but there's nothing. We all have a story, and it's a matter of learning from it and then sharing your experiences to help someone else and just finding. Everyone always asks this question, well, who inspires you the most? I'm like, I don't really have someone famous, or it's just, I surround myself with really good men and women, and I take little parts of who they are. And I'm like, gosh, I wish I was more like that. Just never settling.
I love that. I just saw your tattoo. What does a little petunia mean?
Oh,
Is that what it says? Petunia?
It's a little patience.
Patience. Oh, it looks like
the Guns N'
petunia from
Roses
here. I'm
song.
like,
No, someone said, "Why do you have a little princess tattoo?" I was like, "Oh no." So my
Clearly
little
my
brother.
eyesight isn't that great from far away.
No. It's a bad or not a. It wasn't done well, but no, my little brother passed away, almost 5 years ago, and his favorite song was "Patience" from Guns N' Roses. So I just always kept it with me. So when I look down and things, I'm just like, a little patience.
Yeah, patience is key for everything.
Yes.
My priest before brain surgery was telling me, he's like, patience, patience, patience. And I've really realized that, in every sector of our life, if we apply patience, everything gets better.
You've been through everything. Look how positive you are and where you are. Thanks. It goes to show that's what you go through makes you where you are, and it's how you handle in those situations.
Yeah, you have to just I always say life's happening for you, not to you. Tony Robbins taught me that. And so every time something, that you would perceive as bad that's happening to you happens, you have to remember, okay, so if life is happening for me, not to me, this must be for my betterment somehow, some way, even though I can't see it right now and it looks really dark and dreary, but there's a reason. And if you really dig deep enough, you'll find that reason. And when you find that reason, it's almost like a game in life. You can unlock the next level for yourself, but you have to do the work to get there. And patience is such a big part of it.
Well, and then I was listening to you talk to someone earlier about that you took care of your parents too.
Oh, yeah.
That's just... it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's
you sounded proud of doing that when I heard you talking. Like, that's just when you hear people say little things, everyone has something that they're going through. So don't judge.
I remember growing up, like you're saying you were embarrassed. Like my parents were janitors growing up and we were always so embarrassed. People were like, oh, what do your parents do? And I'm like, I would make up different things all the time because I was so embarrassed that they were janitors. And then when I came into this business, at that point, I was like, Kevin was like, Marie, you need to be proud of where you came from and what your parents did because they were immigrants and that's all they could do. And they did it well and they provided a roof over your head and food. And I was like, yeah. And so I started saying it. My parents were embarrassed at first too. And I was like, guys, you're
a product of them and look at where you are today.
Yeah. And so I remember when we would clean those clubs, my dream was always to be able to take care of them. And so the fact that all came together and I was able to is a gift for sure.
Ooh, that's going to make me tear up. Well, no, because sometimes when I was helping my little brother and he was living with me off and on, I'm just like, yeah, my brother's living with me and now I feel so guilty that I ever said that. But it is true, like helping family and, it might seem difficult at the time, but there is a reason and it's you only have one family.
It's hard. And it's hard. I'm sure that responsibility weighed on you a lot.
It did. I mean, now I'm just so happy that I had that time with him, but before he passed. And I just think of it was such a learning experience, and what happens when I have kids, and one or two kids, and what your siblings mean to you, and just that value.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys always get along growing up?
Yeah, we were only so he would have been 30 on Monday and I'll be 32. So what are we, like 22 months apart? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we were super close.
Yeah. See, and those are the scars and the wounds that that make you tougher and you have to move forward, right? It's like Rocky says, it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, how much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning's done. And life isn't perfect. We all know that.
And it's just, he knew what he wanted to, I talked about this in Second Nature. I just didn't have a dream, or I don't know. I just wasn't motivated. You know what it boiled down to? I didn't have confidence and I didn't believe in myself. I was just kind of going through the motions, especially after I quit volleyball for a boy in college. And my brother always knew he wanted to be a professional wrestler and idolized my dad and idolized Dusty Rhodes and recited the lines and traveled to Japan and all over the world for this dream. Just wrestling in arenas for $15, like $50 probably, or free sometimes.
Yeah.
So then when I started wrestling and now I'm living his dream, I wish I could just tell him that I'm brave like him now, because to have a dream and follow it and get to that and continue and not see like light at the end of the tunnel, And that's like for a lot of the women that I work with who grew up wanting to be professional wrestlers. You're, familiar with the Four Horsewomen. I just look at those three women, Becky Lynch, Bailey, and Sasha Banks, and that they, wanted to be a wrestler, and here they are living their dream. And I just feel fortunate that I get to share that dream with them, because this wasn't something that I knew I ever wanted to do.
But you were meant to be there, and you are, and you are an excellent representation
Thank you.
of the women's evolution.